a big bird of mine is electric vehicles. We are moving towards electric, and I just thought I'd go through a bit of a history lesson, if you like, with electrics and where we're going with them. First practical electric cars was amazingly back in 1897, where electric vehicles were popular. They were used as commercial taxis in New York City. You could either hail a horse and cart, or you could hail an electric vehicle, and they looked something like that. And they were more popular than combustion engines by miles. They were outstripping them. And in fact, that year of 1899 to 1900, they outsold internal combustion engine vehicles, through mainly because of these taxi firms. But what happened, because there was a massive, obviously a big decline, and that was because shrinking oil prices and mass production of the Model T Ford made the fact that that was far cheaper than trying to buy an electric vehicle. We also had road infrastructure. And people needed to travel further, and the range of these electric vehicles wasn't sufficient to be able to get people where they needed to go as the economy grew and people needed to get a bit further afield. And that lasted most of the 20th century. And electric vehicles found their home in the humble milk float that drove around the UK towns and villages in the 70s and 80s. So we did have a small revival back in the 1970s. General Motors in the United States launched a vehicle called the EV1, which was quite radical for its time. It looked like that. They made 1,500 of these vehicles. They were in California. They were all leased from General Motors direct. And there is now only 2 vehicles left. All the others were crushed because the oil companies didn't want anything to do with them because they thought it was going to cost them too much money by people going into electric vehicles. I think one's got a private collector and one's in a museum in California, and they're the only 2 vehicles left of that. Quite modern looking at the front. The back end's a bit awful, but the front end's quite modern looking. So what have we got now? We've got a whole heap of offerings with regards to electric vehicles. We have mild hybrid electric vehicles. These have a small electric engine, a motor within the petrol motor, and it boosts fuel economy, but you can't run it solely on electric. You have hybrid electric vehicles which run bigger electric engines and small and petrol engines, and they do both 50-50 work with regards to moving the vehicle around. We have plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. These can do some mileage on sole electric, probably up to about 40 miles just on electric journey, and then you revert to a petrol engine. And then you have full EVs, full electric vehicles, things like your Tesla, those kind of things, iPace, stuff like that. So 99% of manufacturers now have a full EV option or a hybrid. There are 1 or 2 niche ones that still are staying towards the petrol, but that's going to have to change. The leasing companies that I deal with have enhanced all the residual values on alternative fuels on both hybrid and plug-in hybrid. So residual values of those vehicles have gone up because they want to see those back in 3 years' time. And internal combustion engine, diesel and petrol have come down because they're wanting to reduce their portfolio of those vehicles over the next 3 to 10 years. Boris made an announcement about 2 months ago to move to ban all internal combustion engine sales from 2030. So from that date, you'll not be able to walk into a showroom and buy a new petrol or diesel engine. You'll have to buy a electric or plug-in hybrid. In 2035, what you didn't mention was that plug-in hybrids will also be banned. So by 2035, we will be full electric. There'll be no hybrid or petrol or diesel engines being sold new at that stage. There will still be obviously used car sales. That won't change. So if you are a petrol head and want one, you'll still be able to get one probably until about 2045, I would have thought. I think then they'll stop those in the used car sales as well. There's massive savings at the moment for both the company and individuals for driving a electric vehicle. This is a Kia Niro. They do this in a plug-in hybrid, they do it in a mild hybrid, and they do it in a full electric. So that vehicle there has all 3 options for you if you want to buy it. If you buy it as a company, you get 100% write down on your rentals, or 100% write down if you buy it outright in year 1. So if you've got a load of money that you need to get rid of by April, buy an electric vehicle for cash, and you will help save yourself a load of corporation tax because you can write the whole value off in year 1. For the drivers, there's zero benefit in kind for electric vehicle this year. In 2011, or this year, from April to 2022, there is 1% benefit in kind. And from 2022 to 23, there's 2% benefit in kind. It's massively reduced from what we will get in a petrol or diesel. There's a huge fuel saving. Fuel on electric vehicles costs about 4p a mile. Petrol and diesel costs are between 11 and 14p a mile, depending on what you buy. So you can see there's a massive, massive saving in there. And there's zero road tax for electric vehicles, so you're not actually paying any tax. Maintenance is massively reduced because it's an electric motor. Your maintenance is really tires, exhausts, not exhaust, tires, brakes, and discs and pads. That's it, because that's the only thing that's been getting any stress. This table gives you an idea of how much people can save. You can see there the price of that. The MHEV is the mild hybrid, is only 27 grand. However, the electric vehicle is 36. It's £10,000 more nearly to buy an electric vehicle currently. I think that'll come down, but there's no carbon dioxide coming out of the back of that car at all, of the electric. So a company car driver would pay 26% tax on a mild hybrid, or if he's a 40% taxpayer, £233 a month, whereas against an electric vehicle he pays nothing. So you could effectively give your staff a pay rise by buying them an electric vehicle. You don't actually give them any more cash, they just don't pay anything to the government. Therefore, they could have a £233 pay rise. I did 6 of these to an estate agent in York, and their net difference to their staff was about £175 a month. So all the staff for the 2 months up to Christmas, when they got them in October, effectively had another £350 in the bank that they could spend on Christmas. So the morale in the staff was fantastic. Lease rentals are more expensive, about £100, but there is a massive saving on fuel. You know, you're saving £800 a year on fuel. Plus, of course, you've got all the write down of that on your for your business. So there are the real benefits of looking towards moving towards electric early, becoming an early adopter, as opposed to just waiting to see what happens. Range anxiety should be a thing of the past. These are just a selection of different manufacturers and what ranges these vehicles can do. 95% of road journeys in the UK are less than 30 miles, and 99% of road journeys are less than 100 miles round trip. So if you think that you've got less than 100 miles, all those vehicles will do that before you need to come back and charge. So it should be a thing of the past. It's very rarely people do more than 100 miles in a vehicle. There's more charging stations in the UK than there are petrol stations, which is a fact that people don't realise, and that's getting more and more. Petrol stations are declining. I think back in the 1980s there was about 40,000 petrol stations. There's now 8,000. So the petrol station numbers are declining massively, whereas charging stations, although they're hidden away in shopping centres and car parks, are becoming more relevant. And there's resources like Zap Maps. These will tell you where your charging points are, and you can also book them on there. So you can book your space in that charging point, and it'll only work for you. So it's things like that you need to look at. What's the future hold? I think the future holds road pricing for drivers, because there's going to be so much revenue that the government will lose with regards to taxation on fuel and road fund license. They're probably going to lose in the region of about £40 billion a year once we move to electric. So I think we're going to get to a stage where we will be charged for the miles that we drive. The cars will be GPSed as your phone is now, and you'll be seen to be travelling X amount of miles per week, and you'll get a bill from the Inland Revenue every month to say this is what you've driven, please pay your road bill. Whether that's how they're going to do it or not, it's speculation from my point, but I think they're going to have to do something, because they've got to recoup 40 billion, and they can't do it through your household electric. This, if you YouTube the Urbanaut, you'll see this is BMW's or mini BMW's idea of the future. This is a completely self-driving vehicle. This doesn't have a steering wheel. You just put in when you're in your sat nav where you want to go, and off it takes you. It's very radical. It looks awful, but is this the future of cars? I don't know. It could be. I hope not, because I still like to drive. But we'll see where we go in the few years to come.